Okay. Hello, and thank you for inviting me for this interesting conference. I want to talk today about contemporary Polish theater for children, which are not really the subject of interest of pedagogues, which is quite strange. First, what's going on with the presentation?
Maybe if you click on your slides and then you should move.
Okay.
Yes.
At the beginning, some facts. In 221, we have in Poland 26 professional theaters for children. It's quite many. There are also some smaller ones which are not professional, but I didn't count them. Most of these 26 were established in decades just post-war, like between 1945 and 55. Most of the theaters changed their names and locations very many times over the years. Sometimes they were even changing the town. The names stay still the same, but the theater was moved to another town. Many of them are still called puppet theater or puppet and actor theater, even if the puppets are not really used so often right now. There are even some theaters for children when there are no puppets, and they are still called puppet theaters. Why they now you can see on the slide, you can see the four areas where the theater impact the development of child. And you can, of course, all these four fields get in another way, but in a theater you got like 4 in 1. And these four fields are social development, because the theater provides models of attitudes and behavior, some models of social roles. Of course, the emotional one, because the kids can feel the emotions of the characters on the stage. They can better understand the different emotions. They can develop their empathy. Cognitive, which is interested because, for example, in Wrocław Puppet Theater, we have a performance about Tesla and Edison, and it's much more interesting for kids to learn about the electricity than on the school in class in school. So the cognitive field, because you can extend the knowledge of the world in very many areas. And the cultural one, which is, I think, quite understandable, because first of all, you can learn about the tradition of the culture, some theater conventions. It also allows to understand the relationship between culture and society. So it should be understand that the teachers should really love the theater as a pedagogical tool. When I was talking to the teachers of the preschools or the first 3 grades in a primary school, they told me they usually don't go to the theater. And if they go to the theater with their kids, they are doing this because the headmaster of the school or preschool just led them to go. And the theater for children is not also the subject of interest of not only the pedagogues, but also the pedagogists, because they don't know what to do with the performance, with the meaning of the performance. They use the theater, if at all, work on them, on it. They treat the theater as kind of entertainment. So it's like a good I don't know, the good way to spend a day outside the school or preschool building. I won't read the text that you have on this on the slides, because I believe you can do it yourself. And here you find the answer, actually, why the teachers, especially teachers, don't like the theater. Because it can provoke the kids to talk about some difficult subject or things, or to ask questions. As we all know, unfortunately, the teachers don't really like the questions. If I can go to another slide, I hope everybody had a chance to read the words on this one. The most important thing is that the theater can teach the audience to think about quite important and difficult things. And that's the way I'm treating the theater performance, as a starting point to talk with kids about the subject that are considered inappropriate for them, like death, democracy, equality, dialogue, otherness. They shouldn't be thinking or talking about things like this. What is interesting, the kids anyway will face these problems, and if they are not introduced by wise adults to this, it can be actually a problem for them. For my research, I selected like 6 performances from 2 Polish theaters. It's a puppet theater in Wrocław, Teatr Lalek, Wrocławski Teatr Lalek, and an animation theater in Poznań, Teatr Animacji. It's the Polish name for this institution. And now I will say a few words about the methodology I use in my research. Here you have the definition of hermeneutics, and I don't want to talk too much about it, because the definitions of hermeneutics you can find in many books, on many internet pages. So just the most important thing is the hermeneutics is the study of interpretation, is called sometimes even art of interpretation. And it's important in many disciplines where the which subject demands the interpretive approach. There are 2 very the most actually important words in hermeneutics in this method: understand and meaning. There are 2 key concepts of hermeneutics, and they perfectly fit into the interpretation of cultural text, which the performance is for sure. One of the greatest hermeneutists, George Gadamer, said that the task of hermeneutics is to clarify this miracle of understanding, which is not a mysterious communion of soul, but sharing in a common meaning. So it means that, of course, when we are interpreting something, it's our interpretation, but we have to be in some kind intersubjective to communicate our understanding to other people. And that's what I'm trying to do in my researches. As I said, the understanding is the most one of the most important words in hermeneutics. And we cannot interpret anything, not only the cultural text, without understanding it. Understanding assumes a constant movement from the whole to the part and back again. So we cannot understand the theatrical performance without understanding the meaning of individual scenes or acts. But at the same time, we cannot understand the scenes and the acts without understanding the whole performance. That's the part of the hermeneutic circle, which describes actually the hermeneutic understanding. And the second very important thing is that we are not starting any interpretation of anything like from neutral 0 point. We are starting with our tradition, with our culture, with our preconceptions about this text, or in this case, the performance. And to make my researches intersubjective and to communicate what I was seeing in these performances I choose, I decided to look at them through the views of contemporary philosophers. I know it's not easy, because especially contemporary philosophy is sometimes quite difficult, but it can, if somebody knows this context, they can understand my interpretation of the performance. And getting to the performances, the first one from animation theater in Poland, in Poznań, excuse me, Bałwan. I don't know which names actually of the performances should I use. When we look at the performance, we saw a snowman who have like few hours of life because it's getting warmer and he is going to melt. And he got his nose, a carrot, and the carrot became his best friend during these few hours. But if we look at this performance through the views of Emanuel Levinas, Martin Heidegger, and Karl Jaspers, we can see that actually it's a performance about dying, about passing away, about the death of a border situation. It's Karl Jaspers' expression, as a performance about like accompanying a dying person, or I don't know, dying snowman in this case. It's quite important because the kids are anyway facing the death of their loved ones. And in some books about thanatopedagogy, I read that that they are usually saying that when somebody died and they were young, they blame their parents, they are usually parents, that they didn't tell them that somebody is dying, and it's like few more moments that you can spend the time with this person. Okay, the other performance from Wrocławski Teatr Lalek, Odd and Luna. For the first moment, I thought it was just about being different, because Odd and Luna are the characters that are different from their friends, actually they don't have friends, from their pals in school. They are different from the people living in their towns. But after watching the performance few times, and then watching the video of it, I discovered that actually looking through the views of Martin Buber, again, Emanuel Levinas and Josef Tischner, that actually is the performance about dialogue and meeting, because their lives, I mean, Odd and Luna's lives change when they meet somebody who can become their friend, even if the friend is just a strange flying fish. The next performance, Takeoff, Odlot, about black and white bird. Also seems like the performance about being different. I'm checking what's going on. I have, no, that it's chat, excuse me, about being different. But after deeper interpretation, I found that actually is the performance about identity, about answering the question, who am I? About what else can I say about this performance? About equality, because when these two birds are living in Africa, the white one is feeling like a different, and when they are coming to Europe, the situation changes, and the black one is feeling different and treating worse than the other one. Okay, the stories from Oblivion. They are telling us the story from the forgetting past, but in the context of Paul Ricoeur considerations, we can find that it's actually the story about the story itself. And the role of stories in the children's lives in shaping their cultural identity and just their identity. It's also the story about importance of collectivity, of responsibility for Earth, and the ethical role of the memory. Hell Heaven, a mother of young 8 or 7 years old boy, is dying in a car accident, and she's doing everything to get back to the earth to her son. Very moving story, but actually it's the story about the like everyday democrats, about the how to explain this, about freedom of decide and act, about equality, about plurality, about courage, responsibility as well. But it's also the story about wise acceptance of change in our life, and about allowing others, like dying people and our children who are growing, to live. And I believe the last one, Yemaya, the Queen of the Sea, which is very like contemporary in the subject, because it's the play about the change we are facing, and how we can react to this change, how we can get ready for the change in our life. how to get ability to respond and adopt to the change. And now, after all I said, you can say after Shakespeare, much ado about nothing. But I believe it's worth to talk about these difficult things with kids, to watch with them the theater performances, to let them earlier face the problems they will face anyway. And it's all because I really believe in Tove Jansson words from the Midsummer Madness concerning the theater and its role. You can read them from the slide, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Anna, for the great talk. It was very interesting to see all the different performances that are happening in Polish theaters and how important they are, and like what difficult topics they actually raise around. I will start with the first question, which is about how do you make all this theater accessible to all the children in different cities or in different villages where they don't have access to these theaters? And how do you make it more entertaining for them to actually go and watch a play rather than watch a TV at home?
Now they are actually watching them on TV for over a year. Because what was like a great surprise for me, that theaters get quite well in this pandemic period, and most of them are actually sharing their performances on internet. So sometimes it's free of charge, sometimes you have to buy a ticket, but anyway you can do it still. Yeah, it's a very good question, how to get the children from smaller towns, and unfortunately, usually very bad, not professional theaters are brought to these small towns, to the preschools or schools, and then the kids are gathered together and they are watching something that actually they shouldn't be watching, because it can make them not understand the theater, may have a very bad expressions and so on. Actually, I even heard the girls from Warsaw saying, "Oh wow, we are going together to the theater. It's awful. I don't like it." And probably it's not the way to teach kids attending the theater. And no, sometimes you can, of course, organize some kind of excursion to the bigger town, but then everybody will hate you, like the parents who have to sign the agreement for going out, the coach driver, because the theaters are usually in the city centers, so he's mad that he has no place to park the coach and so on. But if you are a good teacher, you probably will do it.
Yes. So maybe I will ask a second question, because probably we have to really not just educate the children of the theater, but actually educate the teachers to know that those tools exist, and help them to understand those different plays, what they bring, and pass it on. So I don't know whether there are any actions or plans in place to actually prepare some materials for the teachers in the different schools, so they can then
there are actually
pass on.
Plans from the theaters. In quite many theaters, there are now some kind of department of theater pedagogy, and they are doing something. They are doing some workshops for the teachers, especially for them, because it's good if the teacher can watch the performance before he or she is bringing the kids over there to watch the performance. So the theaters are doing quite a lot to entertain and get the teachers got to more interested in a theater. The schools, not really.
Yes.
Because it's a special effort for them, and they need a time and money, and to find somebody else who will stay with the class when the teacher goes to watch the performance by itself or himself. So it's for school,
Yes,
it's a big
challenge.
problem.
Okay, thank you, Anna,
Okay.
for the great talk.
Thank
And
you.
if anyone has any question, you can put in the chat and Anna can answer there.